Yeah.
We are entering the final full weekend of this regular season, and we've got some great games on deck. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down our 5 biggest games going into Week 15 of this college football season. And while these 5 games up here may not be as exciting, as appealing to the eye as some of the other games we have seen over the course of 2020, they are still a big deal and could greatly affect the playoff race or conference title races as well. We've got a lot to cover today. Let's go ahead and just start right up at the top, jump right into it. Washington at Oregon, a huge game in the Pac-12. And you know, it's not very often that you see so many games up here, or a handful of games up here, featuring 2 unranked teams. But this one is very important, because the winner of this game will win the Pac-12 North. They will win the Pac-12 North. Washington is currently 3-1. Oregon is currently 3-2. If the Ducks win, they win the North. If Washington wins, they win the North and will go to the Pac-12 championship game. The Huskies missed out on a great opportunity last week. Had they defeated Stanford, they would already have the North in the bag, and this game probably wouldn't even be up here. But they lost to Stanford. Oregon lost to Cal, setting up a big showdown in what was a rivalry game to begin with anyways. Now take a look at both these teams here, though. Both these teams have been surprising for different reasons. You look at Washington. I think they've exceeded expectations in this short year for them. In year 1 under new head coach Jimmy Lake, they're averaging 30.3 points per game on offense, a mark that I don't think anybody saw coming this year. They're led by the freshman quarterback Dylan Morris, 897 yards, 4 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions so far this year. The Huskies are also averaging 176.3 rushing yards per game, led by Sean McGrew, who has 227 yards and 4 touchdowns this season. And as we knew with Washington, like they were under Chris Peterson and under Jimmy Lake's leadership as defensive coordinator, the defense has been strong for Washington so far this season, allowing just 25 points per game. The thing is, they're going to need maybe one of the better defensive performances they've had all year long, as they're going up against an Oregon offense that's averaging 34.2 points per game and 467 total yards per game. Life after Justin Herbert has not been necessarily kind to the Ducks. Many had them pegged as playoff contenders before COVID hit. Still, when COVID hit and the Pac-12 had this shortened season, many had the Ducks as the big favorite to win the Pac-12. No doubt about it. And now there's a chance they might not even make the championship game. They've lost 2 games in a row. 2 games in a row to Oregon State and California. They need this one. And they're going to need some great play from quarterback Tyler Shuck. 1,389 yards on the year, 11 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. But the key number I'm looking at is not the quarterback play of Dylan Morris or Tyler Shuck. It's the fact that Oregon is averaging 189.2 rushing yards per game, and Washington has been relatively generous to running backs this year, allowing 161.3 rushing yards per game on defense. And I think maybe Shuck doesn't have to do too much in this game. Maybe they can just hand it off, pound it on the ground, and be able to escape this win, especially at Autzen Stadium up in Eugene. You look at this. Washington may have the slight defensive edge this game, but Oregon, to me, has the slight offensive edge, and they've got the home field advantage to go with it. As long as the Ducks cut down on the turnovers, 5 turnovers in the last 2 games for Oregon, again, both those resulting in losses, as long as they cut down on that, I think the Ducks have just enough to win this game, get to the Pac-12 championship, where they will face either a surprising Colorado team or a USC team, which we'll talk about here very soon. But the Pac-12 North title game coming your way this Saturday, we've got the Ducks taking it home. Over to the ACC, number 20 North Carolina and number 9 Miami. Again, these rankings are reflective of the AP poll, not the College Football Playoff Committee or anything like that. Reflective of the AP poll. But North Carolina and Miami here. This game, of course, does not have any playoff implications. It doesn't have ACC title implications, but it's big for potential bowl destinations for both the Tar Heels and the Hurricanes. North Carolina last year pulled off the 28-25 upset over Miami. Pulled out the upset over Miami. That was early in the year before we really knew what this Miami or North Carolina team was made of. It was a pretty big surprise. Miami is out for revenge in this one. There's no doubt about it. Hurricanes are out for revenge. Both teams are coming off dominating victories. North Carolina by 40 points over Western Carolina. Miami, 48 points over Duke. Both horrible, horrible opponents that these two teams took care of business the way they should. But this is a battle to me between North Carolina's offense and Miami's defense. Which one is going to win that battle? The Tar Heels are averaging 41.1 points per game, 534.5 yards per game, of course, led by Sam Howell, the phenom quarterback who's thrown for over 3,100 yards, 26 touchdowns this year. North Carolina is also averaging 218.6 rushing yards per game, led by Michael Carter, who has 937 yards and 7 touchdowns this season. I'd be willing to bet he can get 63 yards against the Hurricanes and eclipse 1,000 yards in this game on the year. But you look at Miami's defense. North Carolina's offense is great. We know what they're capable of when they're hot and when they're playing well, playing mistake-free. Miami's defense, though, they like to force you into mistakes, and the defense has been stingy. 22 points per game they're allowing this year, just 139.1 rushing yards per game. I still think Carter can get to that 1,000-yard mark, but it might stop after that. The Hurricanes also have racked up 26 sacks this year. The pass rush dominant so far, and they've racked up 16 turnovers. So that turnover chain has been passed around 16 times, 9 of those coming on forced fumbles. So this Manny Diaz team, we knew that. We knew that when he took over as head coach, the defense was more than likely going to stay as dominant as it was when he was defensive coordinator there. The question was their offense, and that's the key in this game. Miami's defense has enough to slow down Sam Howell and UNC's offense. They have enough to do that. They have enough to force some turnovers and force them into mistakes. When they do that, Miami will then turn around and go score off of those turnovers with De'Aaron King, who's thrown for over 2,300 or has over 2,300 total yards. That's combined rushing and passing, 20 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. The Hurricanes are very balanced, 272 passing yards per game, 173 rushing yards per game. You look at this, all the numbers combined here, Miami's got the edge. That's the moral of the story. It is a battle between North Carolina's offense and Miami's defense. But I think the defense does just enough, and when they do just enough, Miami finally has the offense that can take advantage of their defense. That's why the Hurricanes are a top 10 team. That's why they're a top 10 team right now, because they finally have the complete team, something they really didn't have when Mark Richt started building them back up, and certainly something they didn't have last year in year 1 under Manny Diaz. North Carolina has allowed 30 points or more 5 times this year. I expect it will be another time, so make it 6 by Saturday is over. Miami out hungry for revenge, more balanced than North Carolina with home field advantage. I like Miami and Manny Diaz to get the job done. And again, not make the ACC title. That ship has sailed. But a New Year's Six bowl berth is certainly within reach. Right below that, it's an unranked game. We've got to talk about it. Come on. Unranked, no conference title aspirations, no playoff aspirations, but this is one of the best rivalries in all of college football. Army and Navy. And COVID-19 has provided us with a little extra history between these two, as if there wasn't enough already. This will be the 121st meeting between the Midshipmen and the Black Knights. But this will be the first time the game will be played at Army, at West Point, since 1943. Let that sink in. First time Army will host this game since 1943. The two normally play in Philadelphia. That just wasn't going to happen. They decided not to do that this year. And of course, this game does lose a little bit of its luster when you look at the fact that all the cadets and all of everybody within these service academies, at Navy, at Army, aren't going to be able to pile into the stadium, aren't going to be able to pile in there all together. One of the things that makes this matchup and this rivalry so great. But I do know for a fact that this still is going to be an unbelievable game. You're not going to have the big crowd there. You're still going to have the fight from both teams. You're still going to have the spirit, the passion, the history, the tradition. Everything is still going to take place at West Point on Saturday, regardless if fans had been there or not. When you look at this series, Navy leads it overall. The Midshipmen lead Army 61 games, 52-7. So they've won 61 times, lost 52 times, and have tied 7 times. Navy dominated this series for a good portion of the 2000s until Jeff Monken came along and started to build this Army team back up. You look at Navy right now. They're struggling. They're not your typical Navy team, and we knew they would. When you lose a quarterback like Malcolm Perry, you're going to struggle a little bit. But the Midshipmen are 3-6, averaging just 18.4 points per game. The defense is not doing too hot either. Before I get to that, I want to touch on the fact that Navy's averaging just 185.3 rushing yards per game. Remember, they're a triple option team. Usually they're over 250, sometimes 300. 185.3 rushing yards per game for the Midshipmen this year. That's not typical Navy football. Their defense, they're allowing 410.3 total yards per game, 212.6 of those coming on the ground. So that's a little bit concerning. Navy's defense isn't too hot, and their offense is not what it used to be. And of course, we knew this would be a bit of a rebuilding year for the Midshipmen. Army, on the other hand, they're sitting at 7-2, averaging 30.2 points per game, 30.6 points per game, allowing just 16.3 points per game, and their option offense is looking like a traditional Army offense. 296.7 rushing yards per game for the Black Knights. They're allowing just 119 rushing yards per game. So I look at this game, guys, it's really unbelievable that these two teams are kind of heading in different directions. And again, maybe Navy bounces back this year. But under Jeff Monken, for the past 5-6 years, Army has really started to be a lot more competitive and has certainly been a lot more competitive in this rivalry game where, again, historically, for the past 20 years or so, they've struggled. Army, I know, they have 3 of their 7 wins have come against FCS opponents. But to me, that doesn't matter. This team, to me, is still a little bit more physical than Navy. They still have a little bit more of an offense than Navy, led by Christian Anderson and Jacoby Buchanan. I look at Army here, at home, a historical game. They're going to get this win. They're going to get this win, and I think they're going to win it comfortably. I really do. Navy's not going to have an answer for this option offense, even though they know what to expect, even though they know what's coming at them. They're not going to be able to stop it, and Army will. This could be a lopsided victory for the Black Knights, something they're not very used to in this historical rivalry game. But you don't want to miss it. Saturday afternoon, one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports. All the credit in the world and respect in the world to every member, man or woman at Navy and Army and Air Force and all of our military academies also go out there and play football. It's going to be a fun one that you don't want to miss Saturday afternoon. Down in the American Athletic Conference, so we are really trying to hit all the different games and conferences that we normally don't talk about all the time here. But we got to talk about this one. The number 7 Cincinnati at number 18 Tulsa. This is a big game for Cincinnati. Tulsa, sure, they're looking to play spoiler, but these two teams are going to meet next week in the American Athletic Conference Championship anyways. So it doesn't matter. It matters more for Cincinnati because they are playoff contenders. They have that slight outside chance of getting into the college football playoff. But to do so, they've got to win now, and they've got to win next week. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about this Week 15 matchup first. You look at this is a defensive game, guys. Cincinnati allowing just 15 points per game. Tulsa allowing just 19.9 points per game. Each team is holding their opponents to under 330 total yards per game. So elite defenses are going at it on Saturday afternoon. One would think that's going to result in a low-scoring matchup. I'm not going to say that's the case right now. Look at Cincinnati's offense. They're averaging 40.9 points per game. They're extremely balanced, 238.9 passing yards per game, 234.3 rushing yards per game, and Desmond Ridder is on fire right now. 2,347 total yards this year, 27 total touchdowns, taking great care of the football, and has been a lot more mobile lately. It was not necessarily that in the case back earlier in the year. The past 3-4 weeks that Cincinnati's played, he's been a lot more mobile, using that dual threat ability, and it's been really great to see. You look at Tulsa. My question is, yeah, your defense is great. Do they have the offense to keep up in this game? Cincinnati's going to score some points, and their defense is going to shut you down. Does Tulsa have the offense to exploit any weakness in Cincinnati's defense and maybe keep up if Cincinnati starts scoring at will? I don't know if they do. The Golden Hurricane are averaging just 27.7 points per game. They're averaging 251.7 passing yards per game, not bad, led by Zach Smith, who has over 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns this year. But outside of that passing game, they don't have much going for them. And another bad thing for Tulsa is they have struggled with starting fast. Listen to this. They beat SMU 28-24, but not after they were down 21-0. They came back and beat Tulane 30-24 in double overtime, but they were down 14-0 in the fourth quarter, had to tie it on a miraculous Hail Mary, and ended up winning the game on that crazy, 97-yard pick six. And then, against Navy, they beat the Midshipmen 19-6, but they didn't score their first touchdown until 1:33 remaining in the third quarter, and that touchdown broke a 6-6 tie. Tulsa does not have a very electric offense. The defense has been what's carried this team. If they don't start fast, and if they don't find some sort of early success offensively, it could be a long day for the Golden Hurricane, and Cincinnati will continue to show why they are playoff contenders. And I think they do get this win over the Golden Hurricane on the road, and that's going to be a road win against a ranked opponent, something that's greatly going to improve their college football playoff resume. Don't sleep on the Bearcats, guys. They're going to win this one, and I would not be surprised if it was winning big. And our final game up here on the big board, guys, number 20 USC at UCLA. A rivalry game as it is, certainly a rivalry game that USC can't afford to overlook, but also a big game because if USC wins this, they win the Pac-12 South. So we'll know who wins the North earlier in the day, Washington or Oregon. And then if USC can win this game, assuming Colorado does not lose to Utah on Friday night, then the Trojans will go to the Pac-12 championship game. So Colorado, again, if they beat Utah, this is a must-win for USC. If they don't, Colorado wins the South. If Colorado loses, it doesn't matter. USC's got it in the bag. So it's a big game here. USC is starting to play like the team we thought they were. You know, they struggled against Arizona State early. They struggled against Arizona early. Well, against Washington State on Sunday, they took down the Cougars 38-13, led 28-0 at the end of the first quarter, and scored touchdowns on their first 5 offensive possessions. Keaton Slovis has thrown for over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, and just 2 interceptions. Graham Harrell's air raid offense benefits him greatly, and it looks great on the numbers as well. 323.3 passing yards per game for USC and 31.7 points per game. You look at UCLA, though. Cannot overlook the Bruins. You probably could have done that last year, maybe the year before. But Chip Kelly is starting to turn things around out in LA. UCLA's 3-2 now, coming off an impressive 25-18 road win at Arizona State. They're averaging 32.6 points per game. They're averaging 203 passing yards per game with dual-threat quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And they're averaging 227.6 rushing yards per game. That's the number that's most impressive to me. They're doing that with Demetric Felton. 578 yards and 5 touchdowns this year, again, through just 5 games so far. So UCLA is looking pretty dang good. They're looking really, really good. And they're looking to play spoiler against their in-state rival. USC, they're giving up over 175 rushing yards per game. So expect Demetric Felton to go out there and have himself a day. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think he's going to put up a good amount of yards, probably, I'd say 2 touchdowns, at least, against this USC defense. And kind of similar to Washington, Oregon here, you look at who has slight edges. UCLA, they've got the home field edge, and I think they've got the slight defensive edge. But USC, what do they have? They have the offensive edge, and they've got the motivation edge as well. Because let me tell you this. Even though they're a top 20 team in the country right now, even though they're 1 win away from making the Pac-12 championship game, one they certainly need to win, USC loses this game, Clay Helton is out. He is out. I promise you that. Even if USC loses this game and they still make the Pac-12 championship, he is out. We knew he was on the hot seat coming into this year. He's still on the hot seat despite the undefeated start. USC needs to go unbeaten. They need to win this and win the Pac-12 title, something they very well could do. But Clay Helton knows his job is on the line just about every single week. The players want to win it for him. I think they get it done. USC is hitting their stride right now. They know what's at stake. They're starting to get hot. They played well against Utah. They played well this last week against Washington State. You don't want to go up against a team that's hot, especially when they run an air raid offense. So USC in a close one, a potential high-scoring game, gets a good win over an improving UCLA team. All the credit in the world to Chip Kelly for slowly but surely turning this Bruins program around. But USC heads to the Pac-12 championship game, which means we're predicting USC-Oregon in that title game scheduled for next week. So there you got it, guys. I mean, that's a lot of games, a lot of coverage for 5 games that, again, we even said weren't necessarily the best of the year and not the most exciting of a week that we're going to see. But here we go. Still some big games, an historic rivalry game. Again, 2 huge Pac-12 games that could determine who makes that Pac-12 championship. Cincinnati continuing to fight for their playoff spot, and then North Carolina, Miami. That's just going to be a fun game, period. New Year's 6 bowl berths may be on the line for both these teams. And obviously, if you love just the contrast of offense and defense and just a heated battle between ACC rivals, that's going to be the game for you. So still some great games on deck this Saturday. I can't wait for it. It's another regular season weekend of college football. And then next week, Conference Championship Week, one of the best weekends of college football every single year. And we're going to have you covered again every step of the way. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in that description below. You can sign up for our expert picks on our website or against the spread picks for games like this over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, hitting 60% of our bets over the last 6 weeks. You can sign up for our newsletter, get exclusive offers and content on our BetNow account and our Patreon account. Both of those links down in the description. So if you love college football, this is the place for you, and everything down in that description is for you. So make sure to go check it out right before you leave here. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.